F.E.A.R. is one of the strangest sequels in first-person shooter history. A game that didn't just change direction, it changed identity. And depending on who you ask, it's either a bold reinvention or the moment fear stopped feeling like fear. To understand F.E.A.R. you have to start with the biggest change. Monolith didn't make it. After F.E.A.R. 2, Warner Bros. Handed the series to Day One Studios, the team behind Assault and Fracture. Talented developers, absolutely, but not a horror studio, and definitely not the people who built F.E.A.R.'s DNA. Monolith's F.E.A.R. was defined by dynamic AI, cinematic horror, and grounded, oppressive atmosphere. Day One Studios inherited the name, the characters, and the lore, but not the tech, not the tone, and certainly not the creative vision that made F.E.A.R. so special. From the moment development shifted, F.E.A.R. was destined to be different. And the biggest change? F.E.A.R. introduced a full campaign co-op. Now co-op isn't inherently bad, but F.E.A.R.'s horror relied on isolation. You were supposed to feel alone, hunted, and vulnerable. Adding a second player fundamentally changed that dynamic. Instead of slow, tense encounters, F.E.A.R. became more action-driven. You're not creeping through corridors anymore, you're clearing rooms with a buddy. Jump scares didn't land the same when someone else is laughing in your headset. Atmosphere doesn't hit when you're sprinting through arenas together. Co-op made F.E.A.R. fun in places, but it also made F.E.A.R. stop feeling like a F.E.A.R. game. Then there's the art direction, and this is where F.E.A.R. really divided people. F.E.A.R. 1 and 2 had a grounded cinematic look, muted colours, heavy shadows and realistic environments. Everything felt dirty, industrial and oppressive. But F.E.A.R. it went stylised. Chunkier models, exaggerated animations, and a colour palette that sometimes bordered on the cartoonish. It wasn't subtle horror anymore, it was graphic novel horror. And that wasn't an accident. Warner Bros. Brought in John Carpenter for consultation and hired comic artist Steve Niles to help shape the tone. The result was a game that looked more like a horror-themed shooter than a psychological nightmare. Some people loved this new style, but for many fans it felt like F.E.A.R. had lost its visual identity that made it so iconic. And that leads to the core issue. F.E.A.R. feels like a game designed by people who didn't really understand what made F.E.A.R. special. F.E.A.R. wasn't just Elmer, it wasn't just slow-mo gunfights, and it certainly wasn't just creepy corridors. F.E.A.R. worked because everything, the AI, the lighting, the pacing, and the grounded art style came together to create a very specific kind of horror FPS hybrid. F.E.A.R. kept the characters, kept the lore, and kept the branding, but changed almost everything else. The AI became simpler, the horror became louder, the environments became more stylized, the pacing became more action focused, and co-op pushed the game even further away from F.E.A.R.'s roots. It's not that F.E.A.R. is a bad game, it's just a different game wearing F.E.A.R.'s skin. F.E.A.R. is fascinating because it shows what happens when a franchise is steered by corporate decisions instead of creative continuity. Monolith built F.E.A.R. with a clear vision, and Day One Studios built F.E.A.R. with a completely different one. And somewhere in the middle, the series lost the identity that made it legendary. F.E.A.R. wasn't the end of the franchise's story, but it was the end of the main narrative. Because F.E.A.R. didn't just stop there, it actually kept going. And in the next video, we're looking at F.E.A.R. Online, the game that didn't just change F.E.A.R., it killed it once and for all.